today's episode, we discuss part 4 of When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Blum. Why did law enforcement use genetic genealogy? Did FBI software get the car wrong? What's a Hatbox operation and how was that used in this case? We get into quite a debate in this episode. You won't want to miss it. And as always, everything we discuss is for entertainment and is speculation. Please like and subscribe, and definitely join our discussion in the comments.
If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello. And today we are going to talk about Howard Blum's book, part 4, When the Night Comes Falling. Yeah, look at me. And part 4 is forensic. What is it?
The forensic scientist story.
Forensic scientist story. So I am ready to jump right into it. Is there anything that we had carried over from the last episode?
No, there's not. And there's a lot in here for us to discuss.
So
we are going to summarize, but there's a lot there's a lot of information in this part that we're going to talk about.
All right, let's do it.
We're going to start right off with chapter 20. And the author starts with the narrative of Bryan Kohberger's thoughts and that he's regretting leaving the sheath. Like, oh my goodness. So he's describing all of that. He's screwed. He's thinking I screwed up. And that's how that starts. Then he gets into the work of the investigators. And the first thing he talks about is how they investigated classmates. And that's how he described it in the book. Did you remember any information? Like, he didn't go into anybody specific, just classmates?
No, they investigated a lot of people.
But at this part where he's...
Oh, I don't know about the part.
Yeah. So... Okay. No names.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is what I'm saying, but that they all checked out.
Yes.
So, and the reason I bring that up is because online, there's lots of names that would be classmates, people in the house, people in the fraternity, neighbors, boyfriends, all of that. So they're just saying.
Maybe a little bit later on, they'll get into specifics because.
Some specific people, But according to his sources, those all checked out, so they cleared them. Then, so what are some other suspects? They're just, looking at people with criminal records and a history in that area, and he mentions how a female detective was even like, you can't just focus on the men, look at, a woman could have done this too. So they even started looking at women. They did find somebody, he mentions, that had a history of violence and had actually been in the area. So that piqued their interest for a little bit, but that person also checked out. They looked at other offenders in the area. And then that's when the gas station video comes out.
And so just, I guess, to that point, that's kind of a broad sweep that happens when, we always say, so the person that last saw them, it could be the spouse. Then you look at, okay, who are some of the offenders in the area, criminal history. So they were going through seems like a standard protocol. And then they go to the public, I guess, to pick up where you left off and said, hey, be on the lookout for.
Well, before they do that, it seems like he's describing the gas station attendants, the one that brings this car make and model to their attention, but it's a bad image.
Yeah, but they said, be on the lookout for this car. And when because there was we went back and forth on, did they actually identify the person who did this? He does state it's a she. She's an assistant or a manager of this gas station. They put out that be on the lookout for, it was a white Nissan Sentra at first, they thought, but then they landed on, through some investigations, that it was a Elantra. And so they asked people to be on the lookout during this time frame. She had not worked that night. she had worked, the next night and was going through and found it. But she was prompted by the police request.
Oh, okay.
And she wants to this day, keep her name out of the public eye. She does not want her name known.
Yes, because I did write down that they were looking at just various videos. So all the videos that they had collected in the area, trying to get the make and model. But I was very interested in how he described, like you said, what tools did they use to get the make and model. And he said they used Quantico through the FBI. And that's like, to me, that's like the go-to, right? That's got to be the top of the top. And so he said they have a software. You can just plug in whatever information they have, images, whatever. And then the computer software would spit out, I would think, an exact expert scientific make and model. And that's when they got the 2011 to 2013. So then I'm like, well, then go with that. That's what the software says. And then
I don't know if that's correct.
Well, let me finish. Okay. People are still debating why they changed it, because later they changed it to a 24 to 2016. We even had a friend from another YouTube channel say the FBI never changed it. Maybe local LE, some state police, someone else changed it. We don't know that that's verified, but that's been talked about out there online too. So go ahead.
So we're trying to take the book as nonfiction with creative writing. So anything that he's stating in this book that he has sourced in some way of a fact of the case, right?
Yeah.
So again, hearsay, third person, maybe not direct, and maybe I need to go back and hear this part, but yes, they did put some of this information into this software system that stated 2011 to 2013. I guess more information was put in there. It ended up landing on 2014 to 16, and then ultimately pinpointed it at 2015 or something.
When they found his car.
The way the book states it, if I remember correctly, that as they were getting some information, it said, okay, the first thing they're talking about, 2011, 2013, let's put that over here. And someone picked that up and ran with it. And they hadn't finished their investigation or input of information, that somebody ran with something like, hey, I heard. And then that kind of made its rounds and ended up coming out of someone's mouth in Moscow. But that's not, according to the book, the FBI landed on a range that was consistent with the car they saw in the video.
Yeah. So maybe apparently he has sources that he cannot divulge. So I guess I understand that. Well, there is a whole section on his sources. So that's at the end. So we will address that. There's no license plate and there's no image of the driver.
Right. Correct.
In any of the videos that they had.
They also mentioned in the book that the car was traveling allegedly fast. So the video images, sometimes it's not a full video, it's kind of a still shot. So it's capturing things every 1 second instead of all these terabytes of information. They just try to take a picture every 1 second or something. So it was blurry. So there was a lot of, they didn't have a car just sitting still in front of a camera to get it. So it was pretty difficult.
Then he describes how they found the car on Washington State University's campus, and we did talk about that in another episode, but just briefly, according to the PCA, I think that was on our PCA episode, there was a WSU employee, like security, police employee in the office, scouring the computer for students with white Elantras, and then there was also a police working for WSU out actually in parking lots
Right.
looking for physical cars that were white Elantras.
Right.
And just so happened within 30 minutes of each other, they both found the same car. They might have communicated with each other.
Yeah, he sent him out to go look
For it.
Yeah.
Yes. And then according to his book, they sent that information to Moscow right away. And Moscow just filed it away on their computer.
Do you know why?
No, I don't remember.
So, because Moscow had this 2011 to 2013 range, picking out one of 22,000 white Elantras that were in the area and saying, well, this one's a 2015. So they're like, oh, well, this one doesn't meet this criteria. So thank you for the information. We'll put it in it's not a direct hit pile.
Okay.
And we'll set it over here. That's what happened.
I think I do remember
Yeah.
him saying, like, little did they know they had it
They
this
had
whole
it.
time.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So then, because they're talking about cars, they say that and also other suspects, they investigated the previous owner of Kaylee's car because Kaylee had just bought a new to her used Range Rover.
Right.
So they're like, let's look at the previous owner, see if anything went shady with that.
I found this part kind of humorous. It was a little off topic, but they went up to go talk to the previous owner.
Oh,
Did you remember
remind
that?
me. I don't remember.
Oh my gosh. So they go up to talk to the previous owner and, everybody knows what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's a little taken aback that all these police are up there and, Moscow is just fishing for anything at this point, right? So the person they end up going to talk to gets super defensive, like super combative. Why are you looking at me? This is BS. Yada, probably had some choice words. Well, Moscow police was a little frustrated. So as much as this guy was given, the police was given back. So they had
I'll have to listen to that part again.
a pretty good. So I found it kind of funny because I thought, okay, if there was a quadruple murder in our hometown and the police came here and said, hey, you heard about that murder that happened over there? Yeah. Well, we want to talk to you about that. Wait a minute, I know nothing. I would immediately be like, whoa.
Yeah, luckily, I think that person had a solid alibi.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's why they're
yeah.
like, okay, can't be that person.
But they went at him pretty strong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I thought that kind of funny. And I was like, what would I do in that situation? And I would be like, yes, sir. No, sir. I was here. Here's their number, and just be,
I know.
not raise any suspicion.
So that was chapter 21 about the car.
Yeah.
Then chapter 22, they're still going after evidence, and they're sorting through numbers that pinged on the cell tower in the area and looking at those people and seeing if they have white Elantras.
Correct.
So they took that approach. They found that there were no cell phones that owned a white Elantra.
Correct.
Which we need to talk about that because if they have Bryan Kohberger's number, they should have seen it.
Well, they didn't have his number at the time.
But they had his number should have been in that list.
No, not during the time that they had searched for that list. That list was confined to like 3 to 4 or something like that. It was a very confined.
But he was in the area between 3 and 4.
He was in the area, but his phone wasn't in the area.
Oh, right. They're saying his phone did not ping?
No, did not ping. Nope.
Okay, right, because it was off.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the rub, right?
Okay, so they think they're going to get it because of the pings and having a white car.
Yes.
Gotcha. Then they have the DNA on the sheath.
Yes.
And he described it as tiny touch DNA.
Yes.
And that was processed.
Yes.
They put it through CODIS.
Correct.
Nothing. They don't get a hit.
No
so
hit.
This person does not have a previous criminal record or they would be in CODIS.
Right.
He's going to start talking about them taking the DNA and doing the investigative genetic genealogy.
Just say they. Who's the they?
the lab. So the special lab that's going to,
Okay.
well, law enforcement is going to have the DNA go through this process of
Right.
genetic genealogy. So the author, how he adds his storylines is he'll add in some historical information. So he goes back to, in this area of Idaho, there was a Jane Doe that was found in a river.
Yep.
So they had to identify, and they couldn't identify this person. And this was in 2014 is when they used this Othram lab.
Right.
And so that's how they have this connection to this lab. Hey, we'll use them again in this case.
Right.
With
So
the,
I guess to put
Idaho 4 case.
Yeah, to put a bow on it, this was a cold case of someone who was found in the Idaho
Right.
area. Law enforcement, and we're not distinguishing which law enforcement because that's important. We can't distinguish yet. Law enforcement uses genetic genealogy to find out who this missing woman was,
Right.
which they found out and said, well, hey, this is an existing case. Let's use genetic genealogy on an open case, not a cold case, which is, except for the Golden State Killer, which was kind of a cold case.
Yeah, it was a cold
I mean, even though
That was like
they
20
always
years.
said it's always active because it's unsolved, right?
Right.
But it wasn't an active investigation like in recent times. So this was a bit of a stretch for them to do this. They were probably crossing some lines that had not been crossed before. Is that fair to say?
That is, and we said we would be able to bring this part now with the investigation into what's going on currently.
Yeah.
And so one of the hearings that, I don't know if it was springtime, it was quite a while ago for this case, they brought in some genealogy experts. The defense brought them in at a hearing to testify about this type of testing of DNA. And these experts said just that an active case where you're trying to find the criminal, that's not what this should be used for.
Right.
This should be used for cold cases that have sat with no hope.
No hope of,
To solve. So
And-
it's very controversial, and
Yes.
the experts lean towards
not doing
that.
it. Right. And we'll talk more about that in a couple chapters here. But yes.
So that's how chapter 22 ends with the history of the Othram lab. So then in chapter 23, he's going to give us all the information about this lab and what they did. So the owners are David and Kristen Middleman, husband and wife of this lab. He gives the history of them starting it and everything. And I don't know if this is his literary technique of comparing the name of the lab, or if they truly did choose the name of this lab because of Lord of the Rings. But it is in the book, so I looked it up because I'm not a Lord of the Rings. I have not read
Neither
it.
am
I
I.
probably would love it if I did, but I did not know any of the characters. I was assuming it was a character, Othram, but it is a wall that's in the story. And so I looked up the description of this wall, and it said an impenetrable, dark wall. Black rock. And I thought, okay, there's, in our society, black rock has a meaning. An impenetrable wall. I thought, that's interesting. If they chose it on purpose, that has an interesting meaning, but who knows?
Yeah.
So this lab is called Othram, and they use genealogy to identify who the DNA belongs to.
Correct.
On December 11th, the FBI had a suspect, and they did not share it with the local law enforcement. So he's saying they got the name from IGG on December 11th.
Right. Genetic genealogy.
Genetic genealogy.
Yeah.
So then the author is speculating, why didn't they share it with law enforcement? And
We should talk about that.
Yes. Do you want his opinion first, or do you
Please.
want to give
No,
your opinion
yours.
first?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So he
Anyways.
gave two reasons. One was that the FBI could want the local law enforcement to build a solid case from the ground up without us impacting that. Even though we have this, you gather all the hardcore evidence and they're going to meet at some point. Or he's saying the other option was that the FBI is protecting their self-interest. We've done this, might be controversial. We're not going to put it out there. We're not sharing because we want to protect ourselves on what we did. And a lot of people online think it's that one.
And there was a third option as well, which was they wanted the glory. They wanted the glory themselves.
Maybe I took it wrong, but yeah.
They wanted the glory for themselves that, hey, through our investigative tools, we found the suspect, right? So they were trying to make that case match themselves. So all three of those are speculation. You'd like to land on the first one, which is, okay, we use, and I'll use a heavy word here, nefarious tactics to find this name, but you guys need to do all the groundwork late. We're not giving you this name because you need to come up with something better than us using genetic genealogy, which has not been tried in an open court in an active case anywhere in the United States. So
it's going to be really controversial.
It's going to be very controversial. So they're like, look, we're holding this back because we want you to do your work, and find out what you need to find out. Okay, I like that idea. Seems a little far-fetched, hey, if I found the golden egg, I'm showing people I found the golden egg. But you may do that internally. You'll tell your family, I found the golden egg, right? You're not going to tell your neighbors you found the golden egg, and you and your family could potentially prosper from that, right?
Yeah.
So
keep it close to you.
And we'll benefit from it. We'll be the heroes. FBI hasn't had a lot of good press according to the author recently, so this is a way to turn some of that around and be an agency of solving crime. So I couldn't remember the middle one that you talked about, but
protecting their self-interest.
Yeah, so that self-interest could be many things, right?
Yeah,
so, okay.
Yeah, true.
But I would hope it'd be the first one, but
Well, remember in our previous episode how you were saying, I think it was a previous episode, they don't get an award. Like they don't get an award for, but I was looking up information about some of the police for that episode, and I was listening to some shows to try to find some information about Ellie, and it was an episode where they were going through their record. So it's not an award, but there are national statistics that are like, how many arrests have you made? How many complaints have you had? How many unsolved cases do you have?
Maybe they do get a trophy.
You want to keep, well, it's like their image, right? So they do want to have more successful outcomes and less issues. So not an award, but people are watching.
Right.
So that's what chapter 23 was about. Then chapter 24 is, I found this so interesting. So this is where he starts talking about the FBI following him when him and his dad leave Washington State University for their car ride back to Pennsylvania.
Right.
And the FBI is going to they start surveilling him. Sounds like they were doing it for a while. And he called it the Hatbox operation. And I like the way he described it. He said it was very old school, and it's basically just box the suspect in. Yeah.
That a lot of the old agents used to wear kind of a top hat, derby hat or whatever. And when they would surveil these suspects in the olden days, the way that they would apprehend them is these derby hat guys would surround them. So if you're looking at top, you see a bunch of top hats boxing in the suspect, and that's why they call it.
Sounds like what they did to Rex Heuermann.
Exactly. Just they
Like
were in regular suits, right?
Because they did it on the street, and these guys came out of nowhere, and there was like a ton of them around him. So.
And that's exactly, And so I thought that too. But maybe you'll get to it a little bit more, but you kind of glided over it about they were surveilling him. Are you going to speak to that a little bit more? Because I got a lot to say about that.
I believe so.
All right.
So on December 12th, that's when they put the surveillance plan into motion. And Moscow had no idea that the DNA had been done.
And the DNA was done on the 11th, and they started surveilling on the 12th. Is that correct?
Yes.
If my memory serves?
Yes.
Okay.
The FBI gets the DNA, his name from the DNA on the 11th. The 12th, we got to start watching this guy.
Watching this guy. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
But the local Moscow department has no idea.
Nor Pullman,
right. So the FBI doesn't want Moscow to know. So they know he's going to be leaving the area. So they want to wait till he leaves the immediate area to really start following him, because they don't want the local law enforcement to catch on.
Right.
And in the meantime, while they're doing that, they think Bryan and his dad are going to take one route, and they take another route, so they lose him for quite a period of time, because he ended up in what?
Colorado.
Was it Colorado?
Yep. Loman, Colorado?
Yeah, the only reason that they find him again is they're like searching now for cameras, like all over the place. And they do catch him on a camera. So once in Colorado, they're able to start following him again.
So what happened was it wasn't just a camera that they were searching for. There were license plate readers.
Yeah,
yes. So it was a license plate reader, and that would just be automatically generated. So if the FBI or some law enforcement are like, hey, where's this fugitive heading? There are some, just so you know, when you're driving around, there are some, stoplights that have license plate readers on them and track you going through there, or at least your car. It may not be you, but your car has went through that traffic light.
So I have a funny thing about this. Some of my podcasts will come up with some sayings, because we listen to so many true crime stories, like so many bad things happen in the woods. They're like, cut down all the trees, right? Like right. That becomes a saying. Yep. We know about the white vans, right? Stay away from the white vans. And I keep saying, because there's, like in this case, no license plate caught on cameras. Why can't we make license plates better, or a better machine for capturing license plates available? I know some people would say, well, that's an invasion of privacy or something like that. Sure. But I don't know. We're trying to catch the bad guys. So
yeah, but the good guys get caught up in it. And
so just make better machines for reading license plates.
Which sounds great. But I remember just a couple roads over in our little stupid small town, we had a traffic thing, right? If you went over 45 miles an hour down the street that was posted at 35, people were getting tickets in the mail.
Yep.
Man, our
the town went crazy.
Our net worth of this town, like we were getting gold-plated bridges around here from that, and it drove people crazy that they literally put a vote to take it out.
Yeah.
You know, be darned, good roads and sidewalks and all that.
It did generate a lot of money, but man, people were mad about that.
People were mad. So yeah, you could maybe catch the 1 in 100,000 bad person, but that all the good people they don't like that invasion.
Yep.
They're doing it anyway. So
yeah, right. According to Blum, the FBI did not know about the Indiana stops. So if you haven't been following the case closely, when BK and his dad, they're in their car, they're driving back to Pennsylvania, they make it to Indiana, they get pulled over twice within 10 minutes.
Yeah, close.
I believe one was a sheriff and then one was like a state trooper.
Yes.
And they claim they didn't know the other one was doing it, and the FBI claims they know nothing about it. Seemed very coincidental, like we keep saying in this case. It looked like they were really trying to check him out in the car. Whether they were or not, we were able, because those were released, we were able to see into the car and hear their conversation and check out his hands and all of that.
Yeah. But the point of that was, I think the FBI came out and said, we did not orchestrate those stops.
Right.
That happened. And they were supposedly ready to swoop in
Yes.
if anything bad was going to happen during those stops, right? Because, they think this is a mass killer. They're stopping what could happen,
Right.
And
That's the way he describes it in the book.
And maybe using some of his literary freedoms here, he also states after the second stop, that's when Bryan Kohberger's father's like,
oh my gosh,
yeah, I'm thinking something's really happening, because he starts talking about Brent Kopacka and there's crazy times happening back over here, and oh, by the way, they're looking for a white Elantra and I'm sitting in one. He didn't say that, but why was he offering up all this stuff? But in the book they kind of it was the aha moment for the dad to say, I've been thinking that maybe my son is kind of involved in this a little bit. But
according to him, he starts in his mind piecing it together.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Just because
right.
That's kind of like the tipping point, right?
Tipping point,
okay, we've just gotten pulled over twice.
Something's going on here. Yeah.
Right. So chapter 25 starts with them getting back to Pennsylvania, and that's December 16th. So from December 12th to December 16th is when the FBI is tracking them. They're taking the road trip, and they get back home. On December 19th, and then the author says, or a few days before, they finally share BK's name. The FBI shares his name with Brett Payne, who's the investigator in charge of the case in Moscow.
Yep.
So the local police finally learn his name on December 19th. And it's probably because they're going to need him to write the warrants and all of that. Because the FBI is like trying to stay hands off.
Yeah, they know where he's at. So now they got eyes on him.
So Payne finds his phone number. So now he's got a name. So he's got that phone number. So now he's searching for that specific phone number on those cell phone towers. And he's like, this phone's not here.
He has to widen his time.
So that's when he puts in the search warrant for the cell phone.
Yep.
So he puts in the search warrant for the cell phone, and then they get a reconstruction of the phone they make a reconstruction of the phone according to the AT&T records. Now they have video of the car plus the phone on the network records. So even though it's not pinging on that tower, they've got records somehow.
And maybe we need to back up a little bit. I don't know if you skipped over that part, but once he got Bryan Kohberger's name, he pulled that up, right? And I don't know if you're going to talk about it. I think it's in this chapter. When he immediately pulls that up, his license appears.
It was probably in this chapter. I don't remember that part.
Yeah, so his license appears, and he's looking at it, and it says, 6 foot something, and
bushy eyebrows.
Well, if you remember it, say it.
I don't remember, but of course that's all they have. That's what they're going to say.
Yeah, so it's like, 6 foot something, 185 pounds. He's like, oh, that kind of meets, the athletic build that, the witnesses stated, and stuff. And he's in Pullman, Washington, which is, a few miles away. So this person could be in this area, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's getting all this information, and then I think the author says he bears in on the photo and, looks at his face and is like, I don't know if this guy looks like a killer, but what the killer looks like. But he does have bushy eyebrows, so, the few things that you could pick, and we've joked about this before, if you're looking at white Elantra owners and you're looking at their driver's license and, the person's 5'4" with red hair and no eyebrows, I'm pushing that one aside. It's a woman. It's, minority, Right. This one is not pulling him away.
Yeah.
This identification is pulling it toward him. Okay, Go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. And then also with the cell phone towers, he mentions that The tower that the house uses covers a 12 to 14 mile range, but that also covers the Washington State University area. So a lot of people have talked about that. If you're pinging off that tower, it doesn't mean you're close to the house. You could be 12 miles away. And some people have actually gone out there and lose service and have tested that out.
Yep.
He mentions and talks about how his sister, so he's back home now. So all this chapter 25 is about him being back home.
Yep.
And his sister, who's a psychologist, is just watching him. She knows what has happened. He's describing her as suspicious, and that she notices him wearing gloves to vacuum out his car, and that he's sorting his garbage. So she picked up on those things. Although I do believe when they came out with their evidence of looking through the car, they found no evidence of any of the victims. They also found no evidence of cleaning. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Maybe it was basic cleaning. I don't think it was like he was bleaching it out or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So she shares that information with the dad. Mm. So you could imagine if the dad was already thinking.
Yeah.
He's probably like, oh my goodness. That's the end of chapter 25. 26 starts with before the DNA match and after the DNA match. So, I think he says there was a time, right, in this whole investigation where the case could be broken into before the DNA match and after the DNA match.
Right.
So he's going to describe the trash pull. So that's how they end up doing the match back to Bryan.
And should we clarify? Should we clarify that at this point it becomes Moscow police that are doing this and not the FBI, or does it matter who's doing it?
I don't remember what he said in the book.
I don't either.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know who's doing it, because you have the FBI was running the surveillance,
right.
But now he's in another state.
Right.
Oh, he did say it in the book. So the FBI is definitely out there, but they had to use the Pennsylvania police.
Yes.
Because the author gives the thoughts of the officer, the Pennsylvania police officer who was in charge of getting the trash. And so it was
right.
4 days that they watched him. So the Pennsylvania police are staked out and they're watching him for 4 days. And this guy finally gets the call or the notification, okay, go in.
Yeah.
Like, go get it tonight. And that was December 27th.
Gotcha.
And he said, they had been watching him go out, go back in, go out, go back in. And he takes a bag of trash and he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring one to replace it. Yeah. So he might notice something's missing. The author describes that situation. And then he gives a story about an officer, and I don't remember this part if you do, using the Othram lab for another unsolved case. So it seems like in this book, he's really trying to back the law enforcement with using this lab, because that has been super controversial online and with the experts that do genealogy. It's just a controversial tactic. So 2 times the author has pulled up these historic cases where, because now they're in Pennsylvania, he's giving a Pennsylvania missing person case where they were able to use this lab to solve an unsolved case. And that's how he ends chapter 26.
Yeah, another cold case. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so then chapter 27 is about the arrest. So they've pulled the trash. They threw it onto an airplane, like you said, got it back. I've heard other people comment on this. So
probably heard it from me.
Get it back. Other people say, well, you can run DNA anywhere. But I think they had to have that chain of custody and So they hurry up. They do this testing, and they find out that it's Bryan Kohberger's father.
Right.
The person's trash that they pulled is the father of the DNA on the knife sheath.
Right.
Is what they find out.
And I think what they say in the book is that in the lab in Texas is where they pull the DNA. You can run DNA everywhere. And I think I used the example that when Osama bin Laden was caught, they did his DNA on a helicopter before they threw him in the ocean. So you can do DNA anywhere, according to the Navy SEALs. But, but it just seemed odd that how did they get it from
there was
rural
travel
Pennsylvania?
time. There was a lot of stuff involved. Yep. So they know that it's the dad in that house of the DNA on the knife sheath. So it's got to be Bryan.
Right.
So now they're like, he's the only son. So now they're like, we're making an arrest.
Right.
So they describe storming the house, ready for confrontation.
For sure.
And they go in, and this guy's sitting in a chair in a t-shirt and shorts, unarmed, oblivious in the kitchen. The author describes them as yanking him up by his collar and taking him out. They cuff him and they take him out and put him in a van.
Mm-hmm. And I can't remember, did they say in the book he was actually sorting some garbage at that time in the kitchen?
He did.
Okay. All right. I thought
he did, and that's been talked about online too, that's what he was doing at the moment.
Gotcha.
So this is the last chapter of part 4.
Yes.
This is chapter 28, and now Bryan's in custody. He's been arrested.
This is interesting.
It is, and it sounds like the author spoke to the first initial defense attorney who... Right. I want to say he was from like New Jersey or something. Like it sounds like he wasn't even from Pennsylvania or a different area in Pennsylvania, but he went into a description of him. His name was Labar, I believe. But at first there wasn't a lawyer. So Bryan, according to the author, is happily talking and open to talk to them about the crime, and he's denying all involvement.
Right.
Until he realizes, oh my gosh, they're suspecting me, and then asks for an attorney.
Right.
So that's when they get this lawyer, Labar. The author talks about him, and then as the lawyer is talking to Bryan in the book, he states a couple things that Bryan tells the lawyer he wants people to know he's eager to be exonerated. So apparently that's where that came from. The lawyer must have spoke. I don't know if he gave a press conference or not. And he also told the lawyer, according to Blum, that this is not who I am. I didn't do this. This is not who I am. I did not kill anyone. I just read it in the news. So that's what's stated in the book. While he's in custody getting questioned, they're back in Pullman, Washington, serving a search warrant for his apartment. And I remember asking you or telling you, like, they know he's in Pennsylvania because you can see the body cam of it. It's heavily redacted. They won't show anything inside the apartment, but they do show them banging on the door, and they're like, open up. And I'm like, they know nobody's in there. What are they doing? However,
if you're hiding in there, you come out.
I think it was in the book that, or somewhere I heard, they might have thought someone else was involved. They don't know who else might be in the apartment or whatever. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. This was interesting. We had mentioned before that he was studying under Catherine Ramsland, famous forensic psychologist. She's a huge author, written many books. According to Blum, she called BK's mom, which BK's mom was very grateful for, and she offered help. Blum says she would not give any hint to his guilt or innocence. I guess right now there's nothing online about her. At the beginning, I think maybe there were a few things. People claim to have seen things, but the internet with that stuff has been, that stuff's been taken down. I don't think Catherine Ramsland wants to be, she doesn't want any comments about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought it was controversial because Bryan is in Pennsylvania and he has to get extradited back to Moscow, and he could have fought that. So that would have bought him time to stay in Pennsylvania longer, but he gave up. He did not fight it. He wanted to get back because he said, I didn't do this. And the longer it takes him to get back, the longer it takes for the trial to start, to get to the bottom of it. And Ramsland said she agreed with that. If you're innocent, get back there and figure it out.
Yep.
That's, if you want to prove you're innocent, that's what you should do.
For sure.
The author describes him saying that he told his parents, like mouthed, I love you to his parents when they were in the extradition hearing. Yep. And the parent statement, do you remember him talking about that? It says that he's giving, or they're giving their full cooperation. So the parent said, we're giving our full cooperation and we're going to presume his innocence.
Yeah.
And they really haven't spoken.
No. And I guess it's a good time. We're, 2/3 of the way through the book, I think, here.
Yep.
I think now's a good time to say, just to add on what we've already said a few times, that he's not talking, the author, Howard Blum, is not talking directly to the parents, but to family members and other people surrounding them and people who are close to the situation. But he's not getting any of these direct quotes or anything from the parents unless they said it publicly.
Right.
Okay. But your overall thoughts of probably the most important part of this entire case, the evidence, how they obtained it. I think there was not too much new information, but timelines were kind of mixed up for me a little bit. That, I was like, oh, that's weird. But, okay, I get it. I guess I understand why. But in collecting this information, what's your thoughts? Like, this is, hey, we got a white car in the area and we're going to look at that, right? We have this phone number that was brought to our attention. We're going to look at that. We've got a name now. We're going to look there. I mean, does it seem, which I've heard a lot of, are they trying to make the evidence fit somebody?
Yes.
Or is okay. Yeah. And that's what I want to hear you say is, explain why.
Yes.
Or is the evidence leading them right back to the same person?
I feel like the evidence, they have no evidence or horrible evidence, not strong evidence. So that's what makes me question the DNA. I don't know if I would question the DNA as much if they had a clear picture of his license plate, video of him going into the house or coming out of the house. If they had stronger other evidence, then I wouldn't question the DNA so much, because the questionable tiny touch DNA that can come from, it can be transfer DNA. So I touched something, someone else touched it, then they touched the sheath, now it's on there. That can happen. Because of that, that can come, someone could have just put that on there. So that's what makes me question that. And because there's nothing else. Everything else is just so questionable. That's why I say that.
So the DNA itself, and I think maybe this is a deeper dive we have to do after we, finish the book. But I've been hearing conflicting things about, it's touch DNA. Some people call it transfer DNA. And, my understanding that the DNA came from a fingerprint. So how do you transfer a fingerprint?
I never heard that. It came from DNA on a button snap.
Yeah. Okay.
It was skin cells. It wasn't a fingerprint. It's skin cells.
Okay. So I guess I got to look into that a little bit more because, there was a lot of centilliums or something.
You just made me think of that.
That they were talking about, and I didn't follow that at all. I didn't want to try to follow it. I didn't want to hold it to memory because I didn't care, but I could tell the way the author was explaining it that it wasn't this was 1/1,000,000th of a pound worth of DNA. 1/1,000,000th.
Right. So let me see if this sparks your memory. So if you need 20 centillions or whatever they're called, if you need 20 of them, they only had 8 or something. Like, right? Didn't they have way less than what for a good sample? I thought. I could be wrong about that. We will double check because I am curious about this.
Yeah.
We'll double check and come back with that.
I like remembering texts. I hate remembering numbers because I always try to memorize numbers when I do stuff at work or home. And if I put too many numbers in my head, I confuse my numbers. So I never try to remember numbers. I try to remember texts.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're gonna have to tell me what all that is because I don't remember.
Well, what's your point? You're saying they had enough to develop a profile, or it's suspicious that they didn't have enough?
No, I think
to develop a profile.
If someone's planting it, plant it so it's enough to have a profile. Chop a piece of his skin off and put it on the button sheath, right? Don't make any, we're going to put 1/1,000,000th of a pound that we saw floating in the air, and we're going to grab that out of the air, even though you can't see it with the naked eye, and we're going to put it on the butt. There's just too much of. That's almost impossible, for me to be like, it could have been anybody's DNA on there. Why is it his? Why does he have a white car? Why does he have bushy eyebrows? Why was his phone seen in the area? Why? So why is there no connection to the victims? Why we don't know that.
Why was there?
I think there is.
They've come out and said there's not.
I think there is.
Well, you always tell me that's a conspiracy. You can't just say
that the prosecution said there was no evidence of stalking.
Correct. The defense has said there's no connection to any of the victims. The defense has said that.
But I think
the
prosecution is saying there's no evidence of stalking doesn't mean that there isn't a connection. And we've went through this in past episodes 4 or 5 times about.
They haven't shown a connection either.
Yeah, because it's under a seal. We're going to show all that during trial. But I'm telling you, my personal opinion is I feel there is some type of connection. He wouldn't have been in that particular area 12 times previously if there wasn't.
So the previous 12 times could be him being in Pullman, Washington, because that's your phone can ping off of
there you go.
That.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to come back with
Then don't have his DNA on the sheath.
Why is that the only thing?
I don't think it's the only thing. His car,
it's the only thing.
His vehicle. There's stuff called
a white car. Yeah. There are a million suspects that have been talked about online. The ex-boyfriend's parents had a white Elantra. There's other people. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. The one drug supplier brother had a white Elantra.
Was his DNA on the sheath? So let's point at everybody else and see where there's.
But they also have more motive. Bryan doesn't have a motive.
Was their phone in the area?
They could have motive.
Was their phone pinging within 12 miles of the
Probably
the
they lived within that area.
Did they catch
and
their
had
number
been in that area? Why didn't they look into them? That's a good question. So we know wait, let me finish. We know that they've been in that area. Those phone numbers, those people probably with their phone on them. Why wouldn't they? Well, I guess because it's not their personal white car. So their relatives have personal white cars. Okay.
But this is kind of a point too that we didn't bring up, but it was in the book, a few chapters, early 20s. They looked at some of the people that we started talking about, Hoodie Guy and some of the other folks.
Other suspects.
And they didn't name them initially, but they did name a few near the end. And not only did they investigate him, Fry said, go back and investigate him again.
Yes, he did say that.
Twice.
He did say that.
Hoodie Guy got the first round. Yes. They took his alibi. They got everything. Okay, he checks out. He's cleared. Fry said, no. Go back one more time, maybe a different detective, and have him do it and make sure he clears it.
That's suspicious. Why do you think he did that?
To take all of the conspiracy theory out of, well, it could be him. You only look at him once and you cleared him right away.
Maybe because they cleared them without enough evidence to clear them. So he said, you can't clear them based on this. Go back and do it again. Then maybe they still haven't done it good enough.
No, that's a really good conspiracy theory. What Howard Blum is saying in the book is they were doing their due diligence not with one suspect, but a lot of the suspects that were talked about online with internet sleuths, go do it again. Okay, you did that initial one, go do it again. Because I'm starting to think for Fry, right? And I don't want to do that, but if there's a lot of energy out there, we already cleared this guy. No, you guys are buffoons. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to investigate. Blah, blah, blah.
There's reasons for that.
Yeah, go do it again. Mm-hmm. And they did with a different person. So I like the due diligence of that.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm. You asked me if they were matching him to the evidence or trying to match the evidence to somebody.
Yep.
And I have mentioned before that there's that chiropractor case in Bonners Ferry, another county in Idaho, where some of the state police officers involved in this case were involved in that case, and they did actually arrest the wrong person. They had to let him go. And dismiss the case against him because they didn't have any evidence. Like they were trying to match the evidence. How do you say it? Match the evidence. Make the evidence fit. Mm-hmm. They were trying to make the evidence fit and things like that. So that's an interesting case. It's the Drake Moore case. If anybody's interested in looking that up. So it just shows that can happen. It's not crazy to think that, but I like bantering back and forth about if there's anybody on
there's nobody on my side out there, and that's all right. I could take it, but it does give me, and I have to say, even though I'm holding my position in this podcast, there's a lot of things that have come out that's like, man, that's either not a good look, or that's going to take a lot of splaining.
Yeah.
During trial, you're going to have to explain that really well for me to say, okay, that makes sense. But I'm also sitting back here saying, we're speculating without seeing 98% of the evidence that they have. We haven't seen hardly anything of what both the prosecution and the defense has looked at.
Oh, I know. I cannot wait.
I know.
Can't wait.
So once this stuff starts leaking out and, in trial, and they started, these exhibits go out there, and then we could finally see them a couple days later, or however that's going to work during trial, man, that's going to be just...
They got to release that gag order. Like, they have to release that. And I know they've requested it several times.
Well, if they what is that called when you set the jury aside for a while? I don't know why that word's escaping me.
They
sequester.
Yes.
Sequester.
I'm gonna leave it in.
Gosh, I was like, but if they sequester the jury, then maybe they'll lift the gag order, right? Because that's who they're afraid of tainting. Ultimately, is the people who are reviewing the case. So if they're sequestered and not back in the public to read the newspapers and watch the TV, and and they're put in a hotel room for it was supposed to be a couple months. They think this
all summer, like 3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Okay.
Yeah. We had a hard time coming up with the word sequester. That's why he said it funny.
Yeah, sequester.
We had to take a long pause till we got that word.
Yeah.
All right. So chapter 28, part 4 ends with Bryan getting flown back to Idaho. Mm-hmm. People were live streaming the plane flight, following the plane. Getting back and him getting off because the reporters were waiting for him, and yelling, "Why'd you do it?" and all that at him. And then It ends with the dad having to board up the house because they really did like bash windows in the door and all that stuff. So the dad had to, it was kind of sad the way he described it at this part. Like the poor dad had to go out there and like just board it up himself. So
Yeah.
that's the end of part 4.
Good one.
Pretty good debate
Yes,
in there.
I love it.
The next part 5 is going to be the defense's story. So that'll be
ready.
next.
I'm ready.
Yeah, there'll be, I think, a lot of recent events and topics we can add into there. So I'm looking forward to that. So we hope you'll join us back for that episode. Shall we give an update
Yes.
on? Oh my goodness, we are so happy.
So happy.
That we have asked for people to subscribe, and
Why?
you have delivered. We have a goal of 500.
Exactly.
And right as we sat down to record this, we have 9 more to go. So that is so awesome. And we're very grateful. Thank you so much. Lots of comments. Oh my goodness. I've been talking to people that correct things that maybe need corrected, or question things, or give us ideas to look into. We love that. We appreciate it all. All comments and views are welcome. So let us know your ideas in the comments. And
if you're subscriber number 500, if you turn that over, please let us know in the chat. It was
yes, if you're the 500th one, let us know. We'll do something special. That'll be fun. That'll
Definitely
be really
mention your
fun.
name.
Good idea.
Yep.
All right, we'll see you back here next time. Bye.
Bye.